Listen, y'all been in my inbox asking when I'm coming back? Well, guess what? I'm back. Landlord and Tenant Talk Uncensored is now live every Monday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on my YouTube channel, my Facebook page, as well as TikTok. So grab your pencil, your paper, and your sippy cup, because I'm spilling the tea and nothing is off limits. We're talking about security deposits, inspections, housing programs, bad tenants, slum landlords, late rent, and yeah, we're talking about retaliation. We're also talking about how to fix it all without losing your mind. I'm calling it like it is, no fluff, no fake advice, just the truth landlords and tenants need to hear. So whether you own the building or you pay to stay in it, this weekly live is for you. Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. Happy, marvelous Monday. I hope that you are well. I'm super excited to join you today. If you had an opportunity to check out the description, today I'm going to talk about evictions. It's not the enemy. Evictions are not the enemy. So I'm going to share some shocking truth. If this is your first time tuning in, thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in. I see that I'm live on Facebook. I'm live on YouTube. Please, by all means, if you have any questions, comments, remarks, or observations, please feel comfortable enough to drop your comment or your question in the chat box so that I can address it and respond to those of you who are desiring to be part of the conversation today, or perhaps you have questions about the segment. This live is for landlords, new, experienced, inexperienced landlords. This live is also for tenants. This is something that I do each and every Monday. I'm here at 7:30 p.m. sharing information. And I just want to give this disclaimer that information that I share on this platform is not legal advice. However, it is the industry's best tips, practices. I am excited to have you join me today. If you have not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, please find me on YouTube. There you can find me at Landlord Lyfe. Hello, thank you so much for tuning in. So I'm going to get right into it. I do have a lot to cover today, and I'm talking about evictions being exposed, why it's not the enemy. Okay, so I'm going to share some tips for landlords. I am going to share some tips for tenants as well. This is the platform where it's no filter. This is what I do each and every week, and I do it so that landlords or owners, many of you have had questions, you've had concerns, and I want to make sure that you can protect your rental property business. But I also want to provide information for tenants, because tenants, you do have rights. And I want to make sure that I'm sharing tips with you. And hopefully something that I share today will be of help or value. If you come into agreement with anything that I share in this platform, please, by all means, like, please tag, please share it with someone else. All right, so we're talking about evictions. And yes, that's right. Evictions are not the bad guy. Actually, it's a tool that many use. Some should, perhaps some use it as a weapon. But I'm going to get on into the discussion. I'm going to share, like I said, tips for both sides of the aisle. So if you are a landlord, here's what I want you to know is this. I'm going to give tips for landlords first, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to share tips for tenants. I'm going to have a segment called Truth or Trash. So please stick around. Okay. So let me get into my tips for landlords first, and then I'm going to come back to my tips for tenants. So we're talking about evictions today. Evictions are not the enemy. Evictions are not the bad guy. I know that some people have this misconception about evictions. And for those of you who do have a heart, such as myself, I've been in the rental property management industry for well over 20 plus years. One of the things for me, being a professional and an individual who have a heart, sometimes I have found it extremely hard when it's time to evict a tenant. Why? Because you never start your business, you never anticipate signing a rental lease agreement, having to evict a tenant. And it can be heartbreaking, especially if it's a senior or perhaps it's a tenant who may be the head of household, have children, right? And you have to evict a family. Sometimes that can be heartbreaking. I know that I have colleagues who are watching now, and you've shared with me how you do not like to evict tenants. You would rather work with tenants to encourage them to leave versus taking them to court. And I get it. Hello, thank you. Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you for tuning in. Happy Monday. And that can be extremely heartbreaking because many of us, we never want to have to evict anyone. We just wish that things will work out. But let's just be realistic and let's be honest. Things don't always work out the way that we hope, the way that we anticipate, or the way that we plan. Everything is not always perfect, but we must always remember that it is a business. And for those of you who are tenants, and if you're tuning in, please hear me when I say this with all sincerity. Many landlords do not get pleasure in going to court and having to evict you. All right. That is something that we don't get a pleasure in doing. Now, that's not to say that there are few who fall in the other category where that's just what they enjoy. I'm not talking about them. Okay. So I just wanted to put that in there. All right, so let me get into my tips for landlords first. All right, so give me 1 second. Let me pull up my tips for you, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, on the screen. All right, so if you are a property manager, whether you're new, whether you're experienced, I want you to know that whenever it comes to evictions, the best thing that you should always do is evict early to save money, meaning that you shouldn't wait for a tenant's promise to pay next week. And let's just be honest, many of us, put in the chat box if you can relate, if you've heard this before, you received a promise to pay from a tenant who said, oh, well, I'll pay next week. And next week never happened. Here's the thing, data shows that delayed evictions cost landlords on average of approximately $3,200. That's the average. Could be a little bit more, could be a little less. Now, $3,200 is a low number, but $3,200 in unpaid rent and legal fees. So you always want to start the process at the first lease violation to protect the cash flow. All right. You always want to protect that cash flow. And then here's a second tip for you as a landlord. You must always, and I put a great emphasis on this. I know some of you are probably tired of hearing me say this, but know your local laws, right? You want to know it like you know your name, because evictions, the rules for evictions, it does vary from state to state. And many of you who manage property in different jurisdictions or you own property in different jurisdictions know and understand that the laws will vary. So you can mess up one step, okay, and then you're stuck in court for months. Worse, the case is dismissed or thrown out. So you want to know the laws. You want to study whatever that jurisdiction is. You want to study the notices. Understand the amount of time that you must give tenants. True story. I have a young lady who is working with a tenant and she's offering this tenant a cash for keys deal. Now, cash for keys means that this owner prefer to just give this tenant cash in exchange for the keys so that they don't have to go to court. Now, in this situation, the owner is moving back into her own home. Now, it would be in the tenant's best interest to work with the owner because either way, the tenant will have to move. And so if you are a tenant and you're in a situation where you know you have to move, it's probably better to take the cash, knowing that you have to move anyway. So I always like to encourage owners to work with tenants, and tenants work with your landlord. I'm going to share a link. If you look in the comment section, there should be a link to the ebook titled Eviction Essentials. Evictions Ain't the Enemy. Grab that free ebook. It will bless your entire life, whether you're a landlord or a tenant, because there are legal must knows for you as a property manager or owner. Here's a third tip for you as a landlord. You want to document like a detective. Document, document, document. Documentation beats conversation any day. So you want to document every late payment, every breach of the lease, every complaint, right? You want to create a paper trail. And yes, you can use text messages. Yes, you can use emails. Yes, you can use photos as your ammunition when you go to court. Because if you don't do it, or if you have weak documentation, you can very easily lose that court case no matter how wrong that tenant may be. So this is why it's important to know and to understand what the laws are in your jurisdiction, and you want a bulletproof system that makes what you do sound and puts you in a position where you always win. Here's my fourth tip for you, Mr. or Mrs. Landlord. In situations where maybe you're not as familiar, maybe you're not up to date with the laws, right? Or maybe you own or manage a company, hire a professional to conduct that eviction for you, because sometimes doing it yourself, and I know that many people will try to do it themselves to understand the process and to get into the court, and you want to ask all these questions, and maybe you think that you can just wing it and just come out as a winner. Now, that does happen for a small few, but doing it yourself, it can create a nightmare, it can create drama, and in often cases it is a huge mistake. Okay, so if you're self-managing, maybe hire a property manager. Definitely, if you're going to get someone to represent you, such as an attorney, make sure they are knowledgeable about landlord and tenant laws. All attorneys are not created the same, and especially for those of you who have programs that your tenants are participating in, that attorney should at least understand the laws, the regulations of those housing programs, right? Because when you use an attorney, they'll take care of serving. They could take care of making sure the tenant is served, handling all the paperwork, all the notices, the filing, and all of those things will be kind of like a smooth operation, right? This saves you time. It saves you money outside of whatever that attorney bill is going to be, of course. But you definitely want to get an attorney, or like I said, a property manager to help you if you know that maybe this is your first time in the ring, you've never gone to court before, and I would much rather you have someone to represent you versus you trying to do it on your own and possibly lose that court case. And as I bring my tips for landlords to a close, here's a fifth tip for you. Okay, I see your comment. Thank you so much. You always, always, always want to communicate clearly. No excuses. Like, don't play games with these tenants. Make sure that you're serving the right notices, making sure that, let me back up. There's a young lady. Allegedly, she's a property manager. She's not had any training. She's never taken a class. She's never watched any of my lives. She's never subscribed to my YouTube channel. So she had a bad habit. This was brought to my attention. So she had a bad habit of backdating notices and delivering notices to tenants as if she had actually given the tenants more time. So of course, some tenants reached out to me asking me if I can help them form a tenant association because they were fed up with this property manager. They were ready to take action. And this was a habit of this young lady. Well, let me tell you this. If you or someone that you know is guilty of not delivering timely notices, here is my message to you. Get your stuff in order. because tenants do have rights. Tenants do tune in to my YouTube channel. Tenants do tune into my live, and they recognize now that they do have a voice. And I'm telling every tenant, if you feel like you've been violated, the laws are in place to protect you. So property managers, property owners, you are required to communicate clearly. Don't lie. Don't backdate those documents, right? Because when you go to court, it's only going to weaken your case. So get your stuff together, right? And always remember that if you do have to take a tenant to court, if an eviction is required, evictions are not personal. I shared earlier that many don't like to take tenants to court. Many don't want to go down the road of having to evict someone. Remove your personal feelings from your rental property business. It is sometimes a requirement in this industry. It's business. All right, so stay firm. And when you stay firm, this helps to eliminate or to avoid repeat offenders. All right, so now let me come to my comment, and then I am going to get into my tips for tenants. All right, Ethos Media Marketing. Thank you so much. Is it best for landlords to outsource that process? Great question. It absolutely is. It's always best for landlords to outsource that and many more aspects of what they do, especially when they're walking in a territory that's unknown or unfamiliar to them. Great question. Do you have any upcoming in-person webinars or courses that can help new property owners with this process? Thank you so much for that question. I see your question and your comment, Kim. I'm coming to you. Thank you for that. Yes, as a matter of fact, I'm going to share some information a little later. I do have some courses that are coming online. I have an ebook. I believe I dropped the link in my description already. If not, I do have a QR code that you can scan. You can download my free ebook. I'm going to share that before I wrap up this live today. So thank you so much for that, Ethos Media Marketing. All right, Kim, you said effects, HAP, and track vouchers. Okay, so now let me go back to that statement. Yes, absolutely. So when you have tenants who are participating in housing programs, it does affect them. It does affect that HAP contract. It does affect voucher tenants, right? But ultimately, and at the end of the day, it is a business. And when we are communicating with tenants, which should always be in writing, even if you have a verbal conversation, right? We always want to follow up with something in writing to the tenant so that they'll know that they are in violation, and remind them, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, by the way, just want you to know that what we discussed today, it is a violation of the housing program that you're in. You could potentially lose your housing. So we want to make sure that we work through this so that you don't have to go down the road, or that perhaps your housing is threatened. Now, that's an important and pivotal conversation to have, especially during this time. And I say during this time because if you're not already aware, some of these housing programs have been significantly cut in terms of the funding to the program. And the last thing that we want to see happen is someone lose their housing assistance over their behavior, or perhaps they couldn't get it right. So we want to have those honest conversations up front, because it creates a healthy dialogue. And in many cases, it does help the tenant to turn around that behavior. So great comment. Thank you for that. All right. So here are some tips for tenants. All right. So if you are a tenant, here are some tips that I have for you, because I don't want you to feel like you're left out. All right. So when it comes to, and we're talking about evictions. Hey, Ernest, thank you so much for tuning in. So when it comes to evictions, one of the things that I always tell tenants this: pay your rent on time and talk early to your landlord. See, eviction starts when you miss your rent payment or you break a rule. So what happens if you can't pay? Now, we know that life happens to many of us. We know that sometimes situations happen beyond your control, and maybe you're out of income or you're out of work, contact your landlord immediately. Let them know, listen, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, I'm in between jobs. I've lost my income, but I'm going on job interviews, or perhaps I just got a new job and I want to enter into a payment plan. You want to give the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, no excuses. Because here's the thing, waiting makes evictions more likely. So you never want to avoid the situation, right? So you want to deal with it. You want to face it. Communicate with your landlord early so that your landlord will know your situation. Never expect your landlord to assume whatever the situation is, because they'll never know, right? They only know what you tell them. So pay on time, talk early, and don't make excuses. Don't make promises that you simply cannot keep, because that will only backfire. I promise that will never work in your favor. All right, so here is another tip for you as a tenant. You want to always understand that rental lease agreement. Understand what you sign. Ask questions, because sometimes evictions happen because of misunderstandings. Maybe you didn't understand that a violation of the lease meant that someone staying at your place beyond 5 days would cause you to end up going to court, right? Understand the terminology. And if you have questions, ask the questions, from pet policy to noise regulations or noise rules, because when you ignore those things and you, let's say, for instance, you get a letter from your landlord, they post it on your door, you just ignore it. It's not going to go away. So you want to ask questions, address it. If you get a letter, you don't understand it, reach out to your property manager. Hey, I received this notice. Can you explain what this is about? Here's a third tip for you as a tenant. Don't fight, negotiate. It makes no sense for you to get upset. You cuss your property manager out. You want to fight. I've seen it happen. I've had tenants who came to the office. True story. I think I shared this earlier this year. I was managing a rental property. And in this property, it was in a really bad area. It was in a high crime, drug haven area. And I went in as a fixer. I can go into communities, help clean it up, help turn things around. That's what I do. I'm a fixer. So in this community, I was sitting in my office in the back and I heard all this commotion. So a tenant had come in. She was suffering from some sort of mental health illness. She was delinquent on her rent. So one of my staff members, who was sitting at the front desk, the accounts manager, told this young lady, hey, you have a rent balance. Can we talk about it? She was very professional. Now, she was the most professional of all my staff. She was the most professional, soft tone, soft voice, very well spoken young lady. And the tenant absolutely flipped her wig. She cussed this young lady out. She took her hand and just went across the desk. The computer and everything on the desk went sliding onto the floor. Well, needless to say, that situation did not end well for the tenant. So I went out, I tried to de-escalate the situation, like, hey, what's going on? Can I help you? And nothing that I said mattered. Nothing that anybody said mattered. So it left me no other choice but to call the police, have her arrested. Then I had to take her to court and have her evicted from the property. So don't fight, just negotiate. Sometimes you may not agree with your property manager or your property owner. Guess what? It's not the end of the world. You're not the first person, and I promise you won't be the last. But when you create situations such as this young lady did, it does not make it any better. It's going to end up bad. And usually that's the unfortunate thing about fighting and that negative behavior. All right. So if you're facing eviction, as I indicated a little bit earlier, propose a payment plan. Ask if there are any payment options. Ask about a move-out agreement, meaning that instead of going to court, in lieu of going to court, ask the landlord, hey, would you allow me to enter into a move out agreement, meaning that you promise to move out by X amount of days or by X date. And as long as you move out by that date, the landlord will not take you to court. Because here's the thing, evictions do hurt. An eviction that ends up on your record, that's public information, it could hurt you. And if you're looking to rent again, it can make it extremely hard for another landlord to rent to you. So you never want an eviction on your record. So that's why you want to negotiate. Fighting a legal eviction, I know it's scary. And it usually will put you in a position where you still owe the rent, but now you have late fees. Sometimes attorney fees could be added onto that, and you don't want to go down that road. Okay. So if you see the link in the description, my free ebook gives you more information about what I'm sharing. All right. You also, as a tenant, here's my fourth tip, and I'm wrapping up here. You want to keep records. You want to log, make sure you keep a record of your payments. If you pay online, if you pay by money order, if you pay by cashier's check, you want to make sure that you keep a record of your payment. Now, I know that in some communities, it does happen. Now, if you're a property manager, if you're a property owner, this may not apply to you, but I have found that in some rental communities, property managers do not keep records. They'll send tenants notices saying that they have a delinquent rent balance. They're being charged late fees when late fees should not have been charged, right? So as a tenant, please keep your payments. Keep a record of what you pay, how you paid it. Get a receipt. If you go into the rent office, ask the property manager, hey, can I have a receipt? Maybe they don't have a receipt book. They could always make a copy of that money order, their cashier's check. They can write on a piece of paper that they receive your rent payment and sign it. There are ways to make sure that you get a receipt for your rental payment. Because here's the thing, if you have to go to court for an eviction for non-payment of rent and you don't have your receipt, now that I've told you to make sure to get your affairs in order, keep a record of your payment, it's going to be all on you. So I'm telling you now, don't expect your property manager to protect you, that it's your responsibility. Okay. Fifth and finally, I've shared this a little bit over and over and over, but I'm going to share it again. You have to know when to move on. If you cannot come to an agreement with the terms of that rental lease agreement, remaining in that rental property, find another place. Ask the landlord to excuse you from that rental lease agreement. Okay. All right. So I do hope that that helps. All right. Let me share some truth or trash. And if you have comments, questions, remarks, or observations, please drop it in the comment section. All right. So for those of you who tuned in over the past couple of weeks, you know I do this segment called Truth or Trash. All right. So let me bring it up on the screen. So I'm going to share some statements. I did get some feedback from some landlords. I got some feedbacks from tenants. So if you agree with my statement, in the comment section, I want you to put truth. If you disagree with the statement, then please put trash. Okay. So here's the first one. Evictions are always cruel and unfair to tenants. Do you believe that's truth or do you believe that's trash? Let me repeat. Evictions are always cruel and unfair to tenants. All right. So let me see in the comment section. Do you agree with that statement? If you agree with it, type truth. If you disagree, type trash. Evictions are always cruel and unfair to tenants. All right. I see your comment. You said trash. All right. Trash to the statement that evictions are always cruel and unfair to tenants. Now, I like that perspective, but now let me just play devil's advocate, because I know that some of you believe that from the tenant's perspective that that's true. I know that some of you believe that evictions are always cruel and unfair to tenants. Now, here's what I want you to know. If you're a tenant, here's what I do want you to know. that a landlord who takes you to court must go before a judge. That is the legal way. That's the legal eviction. Now, in situations where perhaps that property manager or owner implements or facilitates a self-help eviction, such as changing the locks if you haven't gone to court, or turning off the utilities when they're responsible for paying it just because you haven't paid your rent. That could be cruel and unfair, but if they do it the legal way, then as we saw here, that's trash. Okay. All right. So here is my next statement. A good landlord never evicts. They work it out. A good landlord never evicts. They work it out. Do you believe that statement is truth, or do you believe it's trash? Let me know in the comment section. A good landlord never evicts. They work it out. Now, I thought that was interesting. Kim, what you say? A good landlord never evicts. I see a lot of comments coming in from my YouTube channel. Facebook, where are you? A good landlord never evicts. They work it out. You said that's trash. So you disagree that a good landlord never evicts, they work it out. Well, I like that. I like that perspective. Now, here it is. You can be a good landlord and still go to court and evict the tenant, right? Because again, it's a business. It is a business. And so if you treat it like a business, it will pay you like a business. If you treat it like a hobby, it will pay you like a hobby. All right, so I have a couple more. Let me pause here. Let me pull this up on the screen because I want to make sure that you get it. This here is the QR code for my free ebook titled Eviction Ain't the Enemy. Please grab this, scan that QR code, download that free ebook. It costs you absolutely nothing but your time. It's going to go a little bit deeper into this conversation, this discussion that we're having here today. Eviction ain't the enemy. All right, so grab it. I will be sharing a little bit more about, I saw Ethos Media Marketing question about my online courses, in-person workshop. If you're in the DC metropolitan area, please know and understand that, yes, I will definitely be providing information so that you can sign up. All right. Some of the workshops, most of the workshops are for landlords. It will absolutely bless your life. All right, but let me keep going. Here's another truth or trash here. Tenants who get evicted always deserve it. Wow. Let me repeat that. Tenants who get evicted always deserve it. Do you agree with this statement? Is this truth or is this trash? What do you say? Let me know in the comment section. Tenants who get evicted always deserve it. That's trash. All right, Kim, you said you got to do your job. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you believe that that statement is trash. Tenants who get evicted always deserve it. I do not agree that all tenants deserve it. I shared a little earlier how it broke my heart to have to evict seniors. I've had to evict families. They don't always deserve it. As a child, I can't imagine any child who would feel great by coming home and seeing all of their stuff, all of their toys spread outside on the sidewalk in the yard. No, nobody deserves that. No child deserves that, right? So that's definitely a trash statement. I agree with that. All right, here's another one. Evictions are too expensive to bother with. Evictions are too expensive to bother with. Do you believe that statement is truth or do you believe it's trash? Evictions are too expensive to bother with. All right, Kim, what's your feedback? Let me see. Anybody else? The statement is evictions are too expensive to bother with. I know how some of you feel about evictions. You said truth and trash. I love that. I love that. Now, yes, evictions can be expensive. And in many jurisdictions, they are, especially when you have the attorney fees, you have the court costs, you have, in some jurisdictions, you have months of waiting to get into the court, right? And just the amount of time, the amount of lost rent or revenue, it can be really expensive. And so that's why some prefer to get into a cash or keys deal versus going to court. So I like that, Kim. And here's the last one. Once you start eviction, there's no going back. Once you start an eviction, there is no going back. Do you agree with that statement, or do you believe it's trash? Once you start that eviction, there's no going back. Now, one of the things that I would say is this. Getting into, you say trash, getting into the court for some can be lengthy. It could be frustrating. But I like your perspective, Kim. Once you start the eviction, there's no going back. Usually, if there is mediation involved, you can resolve the situation. You can sometimes enter into a repayment agreement, tenants with the landlords, landlords with the tenants, which would derail that train from going towards or heading towards an eviction. So yes, I do agree that that statement is trash. Once you start the eviction, there's no going back. All right, so that is a wrap today. I know that this did hit home for some. And again, I do have a free ebook. Let me pull that back up for you. Please grab my free ebook, scan that QR code, download it. Let me know your feedback. Let me know your thoughts. But I want to make sure that I'm always providing value, okay? Please stay connected with me. If you have not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, please make sure. I see that many of you are on, let's see here, you're on the YouTube channel already. But for those of you who are not, please find me on YouTube, all right? Landlord Lyfe with Karissa Spann. That's my YouTube handle. Please find me there. Hit that as a matter of fact, smash that subscribe button, okay, on YouTube, so that you'll be the first to know when I'm live and when I'm online. So again, you can find me Landlord Lyfe. Lyfe is spelled with a Y. I am looking for that link. I don't see that I have it readily available, and I do apologize about that. But please make sure that you stay connected with me. I do have upcoming workshops, and next week when I come back online, I'll have more information. For those of you who are interested, I'll have the calendar, the schedule. It's going to be fun. It's going to be interactive. And I'm so excited to have this opportunity to provide courses and ebooks. This is something that I've been working on for a while. I'm super excited to roll this out. Thank you so much for showing up. Thank you for tuning in today. Please share this with somebody. Share with another landlord. Share it with another tenant. Make sure that you show up every Monday right here on this platform, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time with me, Karissa Spann, the landlord and tenant expert. All right. I shared tips today for landlords. I shared tips for tenants. Let me do a quick recap. So for landlords, my tips were very clear, very easy. When it comes to eviction, start the process early, because starting early saves you money. I talked about saving yourself time and headache by knowing the laws. Know the laws of your state, your jurisdiction. This keeps you from messing up. You want to document everything like a detective. Documentation beats conversation any day. I talked about how important it is to hire a professional, whether it's a property manager or a landlord and tenant attorney, to help you with those evictions, and then how important it is to communicate clearly and early with no excuses when it comes to tenants, right? Don't backdate those letters, right? Be honest, be integral, and be very firm, be very stern so that you can minimize or eliminate repeat offenders. My tips for tenants were to pay rent on time and to talk early, because sometimes when you talk through your situation, you can minimize the whole nightmare of having to go to court and to be evicted, right? So contact your landlord immediately with a plan, no BS, no drama, no excuses, right? I told you as a tenant how important it is to understand that rental lease agreement. If you have questions about the terms of that rental lease agreement, ask the landlord. Don't assume that your feelings matter or that your feelings should trump that rental lease agreement. That's so far from the truth. I told you that as a tenant, it's always in your best interest to negotiate. Don't fight, don't bring drama, because that's not going to work in your favor. You can end up losing your place. You can end up in jail. You can end up being fined, right? You don't want these things to happen, and you don't want that to go in your record. I talked about keeping good records. When you pay your rent, keep a log. Don't wait for others to take care of that and take care of your business for you. Take care of your own business. Keep those records, your rent receipts, your money orders, your cashier's check, or however you pay your rent. Keep that record, because the landlord may not do that for you. Okay. And I told you how important it is to just move on if things are not working. Things don't always work, and it's okay. All right. But at the end of the day, please know and understand that evictions, as you saw in the title, evictions ain't the enemy. All right. It's always business. All right. So again, thank you so much for tuning in today. I talked about evictions. It is a business. I know that this possibly could be considered an epic topic. Sometimes people don't want to have these conversations, but that's what I'm here for. All right. Every Monday, this is where you can find me. Thank you so much for tuning in. My time is up, and I absolutely thank you for yours. And again, grab that ebook. If you came in the middle of this segment, please go back to the beginning and watch it. Please like, please tag, and share it with somebody else. Okay. And I look forward to seeing you all next week right here, either on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, or TikTok. I'm Karissa. Bye for now.